Testing 1 2 1 2.
I'll call us to order on the Friday session of our state board meeting, and today we have a series of reports. I think it's also appropriate to note, of course, we're leading into a weekend that will culminate in the commemoration of Martin Luther King's Jr.'s birthday, and I think we all recognize the central role, fundamental role of high-quality public education in creating true equality of opportunity, so I think that we need to be conscious of that as we go about our work, not just today, but every day. So I wish everyone a good weekend celebrating Dr. King and the commitment to equality. We have a series of reports. And we start with two reports from Dr. Hernandez that are about educational service cooperative evaluations. And this continues a process, but I just realized that Robert Hunter is back there, and I'm going to get in trouble if I do not let him remind us of our instructions. I'm sorry, Robert. I've got the drill down, but
That's all right, Dr. Barth. We understand the importance of safety for us here at ADEQ, and any state building we are in is the responsibility of the staff at each of the agencies, and we appreciate you letting us just remind everybody, to the board members, to the commissioner, and to all of our guests and staff, that if there is an emergency, you will notice that the red lights, the white lights, the sirens will go off. If you will follow either Dan or Kimberly out this door here, just go out to the sidewalk, turn right, and go to the back of the parking lot. Someone will meet you. It'll be more than likely myself, but we want your safety to be utmost here at ADQ. And again, we're so glad to have you here our second day. Glad you all got in. And if there's anything we can do, please let us know. Have a great meeting.
Thank you, Robert. Have a great weekend. All right, I'll now turn it over to Dr. Hernandez. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. Mike Hernandez, State Superintendent for Office of Coordinated Support and Service. And again, you do have two reports that are attached for North Central and Great Rivers Co-op, two really good co-ops. I just want to make sure I draw your attention back to the remind about the process is that the rubric is structured in a way to make sure that they meet components. So when you see a lot of these 4s or 5 scores, it's because they're meeting the requirements that are put forth in law. Where you really see your differentiation between co-ops and some of the unique things they're doing specific to their communities is in that highlights piece where it says, here's, for example, one of the unique things that was in North Central is that they've taken kind of an ownership of their co-ops in terms of finance. And so they've really gone out and worked at using systems to educate their superintendents and board members about how to look at finance a little bit differently and how to make it a little bit more transparent and not as complicated as you mentioned yesterday, Ms. Newton. And at the same time, they offer training services with their local fiscal services out to their community schools as needed when they have those transitions. So that's one aspect. And on the other side with Great Rivers, back before we had the statewide network for infrastructure with internet services, they really went out and tried to get fiber to all their schools and work through that process in the beginning. So those are just two examples with both of these co-ops that they're really listening and trying to be responsive to their member districts. But if you have any questions about any of the reports, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. I'll just start over here. Ms. Cochrane, anything, I guess, on either the North Central or the Great Rivers report? Okay. Ms. Newton, anything? Dr. Hill, anything? Okay.
The co-op directors are being very complimentary of the new process, of the staff that they're working with, and they feel like the ones who have spoken with me, that it's meaningful as opposed to just do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So Dr. Hernandez, how far along? This is maybe our fifth.
This report? Is our fifth and sixth, I believe. We'll have one we know of in February that we've got done. We're getting ready to go to Northwest Co-op next week, and then followed by DeQueen Mena. And so we anticipate having all the co-ops finished and reported to you by sometimes June or July.
Okay. And then in future years with this new process, I mean, is this a kind of going to be a kind of a normal cycle that we'll kind of do them several a month? Is that your thought?
The approach we're wanting to take is, you adopted the final rules for co-ops that kind of embedded what we're evaluating on now. And so at the end of this, we have plans to come back as a group and with the co-op folks and have discussions about with AD, and also kind of talk about how did this process go? How do we need to tweak the process? Do we want to continue to wait every 5 years before we redo it? Do we want to stair step and stagger co-ops where we may be doing a group, 3 co-ops every year? So those are kind of the discussion points. I think it's hard to do them all in 1 year, that it may be beneficial to do them on a rolling cycle, but that's something I think we need to have more conversation about. And then also just modifications to where we start to maybe look at more, are they meeting the letter of the law, or is there a quality structure? Is how well are they meeting the law? One of the very consistent things that we've seen is related to their needs assessments that they send out to their member districts. We'll have some that'll get 900 responses. We'll get some that get 50 responses. Mm-hmm. So is that really, according to what the rules say, they're administering it, but to what degree is that being administered, and what's the quality of the information coming back in, and how are they using it to support their member districts? So I think that's one that's a consistent thing that they agree, and we've talked about trying to figure out how we measure that a little bit better and try to put more of an emphasis that obviously you can't serve the member districts if you don't have a good mechanism to get information back from them. And, including teachers, all the different folks that are involved in that education co-op.
Yeah. Just speaking for myself, I mean, I think a couple a year would probably be a good way to do it rather than every 5 years. I mean, I think, and of course, if there are challenges that arise for co-ops, when they're off cycle, that creates an opportunity, to reach out to them and bring them in. But I would prefer a couple a year, but that's just speaking for myself. That just seems to be a good way to do it moving forward, but y'all will use your judgment to what works best for the department. So, anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Next up, we have a report that was delayed on the Rockbridge Montessori charter, and Lisa Tyler is here. We're glad she's here. And this is in particular the Rockbridge's issues related to special education.
Good morning, Lisa Tyler, Associate Director, Special Education, and we had put together a report based on a request from the board to update you on the special education services at Rockbridge. So I believe that you have that in your packet. I would just walk you through it quickly and tell you the first part of it just kind of describes the monitoring process that we went through last year and the purpose of that and some of the activities. We have outlined the non-compliance. There's a section in here that explains that we recognize the need for additional support for both Rockbridge and other charter schools and schools that are not served by a cooperative. So we have provided a grant for a consultant to specifically serve those schools through APSRC. And then we did a site visit on December 8th, 2017, and we've outlined the results of that visit, that it was generally positive. I think we were pleased with the outcomes. One of the things that I was most pleased was that the general education teachers knew who the students were with IEPs and what their accommodations were, and that the special education teacher knew his students and what their needs were. Our staff said the atmosphere was positive, and they were very pleased to see some of the changes that had taken place. There were still some ongoing concerns, and we've outlined those. Teacher turnover, I think, continues to be a concern, And then there's still a question of some compensatory education services for some students that were at Rockbridge last year that we didn't necessarily identify non-compliance specifically by going through their records, but we knew that they didn't have a special education teacher for a portion of the year. And so we had directed Rockbridge to examine those students and determine any lack of progress, and I think they're still in the process of doing that. So I will open it up to any questions that y'all might have. And I have Kristen Hughes here with me, and she is our program advisor for non-traditional programs and has provided a substantial amount of support to Rockbridge.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll start over here. Ms. Reith, did you have any questions on this report? Okay, Ms. Hook?
Yes, I think for the benefit of those who aren't educators, I'm going to explain the compensatory education. If a child is been identified as having a handicap and they don't receive the service or they don't receive the appropriate service, which these students didn't for like 72 days, is that right? Okay, last year. Then when they do begin to get the service, they not only get the service that they're needing, but they also have to be compensated with instruction, not compensated financially. Compensated, and what she was saying is there is, at this point, no evidence that they are trying to, like, work with them a longer school year, work with them 2 times a day as opposed to 1, you know, whatever it might be. And so that is a concern. That would be a problem. If your child needs help and they go 72 days without help, then, you know, then it's going to be hard to catch up because they obviously have concerns. The mentoring, I think we talked a little bit, there may be not rules written for that yet on special education, but how often are the people who are helping this teacher there?
Through our unit and through APSRC, I think that specifically you can see in the report, I don't know what page it is for you, but let's see, well, it's page 2, so you can see all the site visits that have occurred from the consultant that is working with them. And I think 19 site visits since August 4th. So there's been quite a bit of assistance to the Rockbridge staff. And I just want to clarify the compensatory education. It's our understanding that one of those students was not even in need of consideration for compensatory education because it was a speech-only student and they received their services. 3 of the students' parents declined, is that correct, the services? And the other students, it's our understanding that letters have been sent to the parents offering the services. So a little bit of a twist on compensatory education in that it's not necessarily like a 1 hour per 1 hour. It's determined on the lack of expected progress. And so they were directed to assess that, and there wasn't a real clear picture of that last year, but there are new staff in place, and I believe all of those students have been offered rather than assessing the students to see who needed it. I believe all the parents have been sent letters, and they can correct me if that's not right.
Okay, so they did something similar to what Dr. Arola does about expected growth and actual growth?
They're supposed to look at the goals outlined on their IEP and the progress they expected the student to make, and then assess where the student is and if there is a lack of expected or interrupted progress. They did not do that last year. They didn't have a lot of mechanism to do that this year because they didn't have a lot of information from last year, so they just offered it to every one of those students that was affected, is our understanding.
And you made reference to a list of the site visits. I'm either overlooking it or it's not was not connected to my packet.
So on my report, it starts on the bottom of page 2, and it says APSRC consultant provided to Rockbridge. And above that, there's a little paragraph that talks about 19 site visits. Okay.
I see it.
Yeah.
I was looking for a list. Okay. Do you feel like there is a sense of urgency there for the needs of these children?
I have not visited Rockbridge personally. I guess I can let Kristen address what she saw. I felt like what was reported to me was the staff were very pleased with what they saw at Rockbridge.
And what about I want to hear from you, but I want to ask this question too. When you contract for services like occupational and physical therapy and speech therapy, are the contract people bringing that equipment in and out, or is there equipment there for the students, and how is that handled?
Each district does that a little bit differently. I don't know what the students' needs are, what type of equipment. You know, sometimes in occupational therapy, it's very small items that they might be using. Speech therapy, it's regular instructional materials, mirrors, that kind of thing, depending on if it's articulation or language. So I can't answer that specifically for how Rockbridge is doing that.
Maybe have you been there?
And I think it's whatever's outlined in their contract with that OT, PT, speech provider as to who.
So it's not on site. They don't have equipment on site. They bring it back and forth.
I'm not aware of the answer of that, Ms. Zook. We'd have to check.
I think we may have a comment from, yeah, come on up. Just identify yourself.
I'm Josh Mills. I'm one of the special ed teachers at Rockbridge. To answer your question about the OT-PT services, and speech services, they do bring their own material in.
Okay, thanks. That's all for now.
All right, great. Mr. Blythe? Okay, Ms. Chambers? Dr. Hill? Ms. Newton?
I just had a couple of questions on, I think it's page 4, I believe. It talks about that there were 6 areas that were not cleared. 22 out of 28 issues had been cleared. What is not being cleared?
I'm not aware of those specifically, and I don't know if Kristen can tell us offhand or not.
I know that assessments in required areas for specific disabilities, not all of the components were there for an identified disability. Sorry. And just different components of the evaluation. The appropriate signatures of IEP team members, meaning that the required members were not in attendance of the meeting. So we've been working on that.
Okay. Is it more paperwork issues, or is it students not getting services issues?
Well, these reports were specifically on the student folders. So
Okay.
those are those that's listed.
Okay.
They do have some policies and procedures that they need to provide to us, and it's my understanding that that's going to be complete on our next visit on January 25th.
Okay. So in your estimation, students that have IEPs are getting the services that they need to have?
Currently.
Okay.
Yes, and they've hired a new certified special education teacher who started on Monday, and her license was effective on January 8th, 2018. So she's there, and she's in the classroom today.
Okay. The only other question I had was about the teacher that had resigned and it was being taught by a para. Is that still happening, or do you know?
To my knowledge, that position has not been filled, and that was a general education
Right.
teacher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And we don't know if the paraprofessional has the Montessori or special ed training either, do we? Okay, do we know how many students are being served and how many different types of handicaps one teacher is trying to take care of?
They are not at their cap of 25. I think they're at like 19 or 20 right now. 19, I think.
But we don't know how many different handicaps.
We do not, but that is, every classroom in Arkansas, there are a variety of eligibility categories that kids are identified under, that, Ms. Zook, and so it's about the services, not about why they're eligible, although there are some disabilities that are unique and need some specific interventions and procedures.
Based on what you've seen, would you feel comfortable if you had a handicapped child for it being in this program?
I have not seen specifically, but what I've heard, especially the last site visit, I think that they're getting good services.
Thank you.
So what as I hear it and read it, is that things have been kind of cobbled back together, but what is worrisome to me is that there may not be kind of systems in place that makes this sustainable. It feels very fragile. If one piece it goes away, this system that's in place for students with special needs may also fall apart. Is that a accurate portrayal?
I would think the staff turnover in general, special ed or general ed, all of the students, all the kids with IEPs are in the general ed classroom most of the time, so they're all affected by that, as well as a special ed teacher. I think the supports that we have put in place in partnering with APSRC to continue to support the school will certainly help and be a safety net for that turnover, but the teacher that they have now, from what my understanding, has been a really good thing for the school. And so if, that were to change.
Okay. Great. So my question for the board is, where does that leave us in terms of moving forward with our responsibility to track what's going on at Rockbridge? And so I really just look for guidance for the board in terms of what y'all want in the way of ongoing oversight.
Do we have any, I know this will be out of your bailiwick, but do we have any data from Rockbridge about their test scores, about how many open seats they have, about the other parts of the program as opposed to just the special ed classrooms?
And I think we do have somebody else from Rockbridge here. Is that?
Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
Good morning, Will Felton. I'm the superintendent at Rockbridge. I can help out in those areas. We just finished our second round of NWEA testing. The data is kind of raw still. We haven't compiled it because we just closed the testing window. But we're seeing huge growth in both SPED and general education. In many of the classes, most of the kids have already reached their annual goal based on NWEA growth model, and almost every kid has grown. They're supposed to reach that growth model by the data at the end of the year. If the correlation is true between NWEA and ACT Aspire, I believe that we're going to see huge growth in that area too next year.
So you were or were not pleased with your ACT Aspire scores?
No, ma'am, I was not pleased with their scores from last year.
Okay.
No.
And you have interventions in place to address?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. We're all teaching, including myself, to help with small group Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Adding the special ed teacher has been a blessing that we've looked and looked for a while. That freed up the young man that was doing our special ed. He has a master's in reading, so he's been working with students now more in that area. Most of our kids were scoring around the 3rd and 4th grade reading level, so we were bringing them up to get them back on grade level.
Does Montessori use the science of reading, or do they use whole language?
What we found out is that they use whole language. We've modified some of it in the older grades, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, to do more of what your literacy block, writing and reading instructions based on strategies to help the students with comprehension, vocabulary, and things like that.
You may want to rethink that, since there is I don't know if it's a law, an act, or an encouragement in Arkansas now to do the science of reading from kindergarten up. And I don't
Yes,
know if
ma'am.
you'll have to get some kind of permission from Montessori, or I don't know how that works.
We're working with them to blend that so we can do that. We've already figured out we can still hold the Montessori components and still do the science of reading.
Okay. And how many open seats do you have?
Right now, we have 61 open seats, we've started pre-registration. We had about 10 kindergartners sign up for next year. A lot of parents want 3 and 4 year services, 3 and 4 year olds, which is common for a Montessori school. But I really felt like as a school we need to get everything in a row before you even go down that street. I started. A lot of the families are coming back. They've already committed to come back, and the staff has to. The staff feels really good. I've been very blessed with a good staff that's been, have a guy come in and change things around for the better. So,
Good leaders get good staff.
well, I have a great staff. Plus, I can't thank ADE enough. The SPED department, Kristen and them have been a huge help, and having that LEA person with APSRC, Jerica. My mother was a SPED teacher for 32 years, and when I told her about this job I was going to take, and we kind of talked about the SPED thing, she was like, "Oh, you got to." I wasn't going to take it, but she said I had to take it for the benefit of the kids. So I'm glad that we're getting that all worked out.
Thank you.
So in terms of the open seats, are they fairly evenly spread across grades, or are they concentrated?
We're very heavy in 1, 2, and 3. They're full. The older kids, which most schools that go K-8 have that problem, I think. We really don't have any sports programs or things like that because we're not big enough. However, we are adding 8th grade next year, and those kids are moving up. And we really feel like a lot of our siblings in 2nd and 1st grade have kindergartner that are coming up next year, too, that they're going to fill in.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Chambers?
To the question that you raised about what's next, I should know this, but I was trying to think through Rockbridge's peer equivalents, when we think about what else we're reviewing and the frequency and how we look at not only improvement in performance within an individual institution, but comparatively, when would they come back to us normally? When would we know more about their performance?
Ms. Boyd is not
Boyd's
here. Ms. Kaufman, do you happen to have that in your?
That's okay. I just I was trying to think through when is a one-off kind of a review that is unique to an institution appropriate, and when do we just make sure that we're paying attention when we have an opportunity to review peer groups?
Right. And so what I think we do need to kind of lay out what our options are. We could I'll look to y'all to see if this is right. One option would be to do something more informal like this again, to be sure that things are continuing on the right path. A second option would be a more formal action that I think would probably have to take place in a formal meeting, which would be to ask the charter authorizing panel to do an examination, right? Would that be those are kind of the two options. So a more informal or a more formal review. I think that's kind of where we are.
I think that's accurate, yes.
Well, and I would agree. These are early days, and it sounds like great early results, which is wonderful. But it takes time to kind of settle in and sustain, and so I think that makes perfect sense to have another informal. The question would be, when is that?
Yeah. I see Ms. Newton as well.
My question would be if somebody from the department could check and see when the charter authorizing panel is going to review them again, and that would give us some guidance on when we might need an informal.
All right. We'll get that answer. Well, maybe move on and then come back to this?
Yeah, we'll get somebody to call over there and see, and then we'll get you an answer just shortly.
You want to take a quick break and try to get that answer, or do you want to move on with the meeting? Okay. All right. We'll come back to this item before the end of our day today to get clarity about where we go next. Is everybody good on that?
Well, if you give us 5 minutes or so, I don't want to hold up our Rockbridge folks because they probably have kids they need to get back to. So, Dr. Barth, if it's okay, we'll pause, we'll make a phone call and get that information. Okay? All right.
So we'll come back in 5 to 7 minutes. All right. And I think Dr. Pfeffer has an answer for us.
Yes, sir. We did some checking, and Rockbridge is on the February 15th Charter Panel agenda to come and provide a report. This report is a follow-up from last August, and the report, and we did confirm with the school leaders, and they are prepared to make that report to address all of those findings from before. So it's on the schedule for the Charter Panel to hear and consider as a report, and depending on whether or not there are follow-up concerns, then the Charter Panel would make a decision, if they felt there was additional information to be provided. So that's where we are in terms of what's been planned.
And so that's a report to the panel. So it's, if there was no action taken by the panel, would that even come back to us for review?
Beyond accepting the report?
So we would.
That's what Lincoln
Yeah.
would need to give us that.
I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
So it would not be on our agenda in March?
It would not be on your
Unless
agenda
there
in
was
March
action
unless in your review of the live stream or minutes of the Charter Panel, then you could come back and seek additional information.
Okay. So would it be proper for us to ask for, well, I don't know what to, I can sense on this board a desire to revisit this issue and not leave, if there are problems in the school, not leave those hanging. That said, it sounds like if the Charter Authorizing Panel doesn't see any concerns, it would not come back to us. So.
Well, so Lori, help me, but I think you all could request that you get an update in March following that report, that the charter unit, special ed unit, whomever would be appropriate. I mean, you all could ask for an update from that meeting, and then based on your determination, whether you feel more confident of the direction and the things that are in place, then choose then what type of follow-up you feel like would be needed.
And
That is correct, yes.
okay. And that could that be placed on the action agenda for March?
Yeah, at your request, we certainly could do that.
So can we change the quote report to the Charter Panel to a review by the Charter Panel, or are those the same thing?
I think we've established that it is a report, a status report that was requested in August, and I don't think, I think it would be changing the rules of the game for it to be a charter review, but that's what I'm saying. If the report is at that point unsatisfactory to either the Charter Panel or to the board, either entity could then make a determination for follow-up review then.
Yeah, I guess my concern is the best possible scenario, everything is good and right and everybody goes back to school, and the worst possible scenario is we revoke, and then those parents who have children there who maybe want to use a charter, it's past the lottery time, and it's, because it's like a 3-month process to go through all of that. So therein lies my quandary.
And the report that they're going to provide will address finance, special education, governance, and compliance with ADE required reporting. So those would be the 4 areas that would be included in that report.
All right. Well, it sounds like to do right by Rockbridge and be clear on the rules, they will report February 15th to the Charter Authorizing Panel. We will, on our action agenda in March, get a report on that report, which would then give us the appropriate freedom to ask for a full review if we felt there were still challenges arising. You're totally right, Ms. Zook. It would be a multi-month process, but that is the way that these these rules have been developed over time. Correct? Everybody good with that? Okay. Sound good? Okay. All right. Next up, Courtney Cochrane, Teacher of the Year report.
While she's coming, Mr. Chair, can we excuse our Rockbridge folks?
Thank you all so much for being here. It was very helpful for the extra data that y'all could provide us, and we appreciate your dedication shown to your school and to your students by being here today. So thank you.
That's half the staff.
It's okay. You can do it for me. Thank you. All right, so for the rest of my time with you, I'm going to take you down the road to educational equity, which is paved with cultural responsiveness, and that's where I'm going to start today. Of course, as a teacher of Spanish for heritage learners, cultural responsiveness is, so to speak, my jam. So what is cultural responsiveness? Manny Scott, the freedom writer, said, "You can't serve someone you don't understand. Humble yourself and be a student of your students." So basically, cultural responsiveness, as a Spanish teacher, a world language teacher, when I talk about culture, or when world language teachers talk about culture, we talk about products, practices, and perspectives. So that's anyone and everyone. It has nothing to do with skin color or race. It's all about your identity. And when I go around and I do workshops on cultural responsiveness around the state, I start off by having the participants create an identity wheel. And we write out pieces of our identities that are important to us. So I will write things like, I was a cheerleader in high school, because there is a culture surrounding that. My parents are divorced. There's a culture surrounding that. And then when we have those finished, we can begin to connect according to our similarities. My definition of cultural responsiveness is learning about each other, learning about our similarities and our differences, and using that knowledge to build trust and work together towards a common goal. How we do it is we first study ourselves, like I said, examine our own identities, examine our own beliefs, our own social cognition, and reflect on our practices and our habits of mind that will affect what we do with our students, because culture affects everything, and it affects the information we perceive and how we give information, how we can't think of my English word right now, how we give information to the world. And then we become students of our students and their families, because as we've discussed, families possess funds of knowledge that are critical to our practice. We employ a strength-based lens, and we communicate and maintain high expectations. So I visited Russellville High School, where Paul Gray, our 2008 Arkansas Teacher of the Year, teaches, and he has started a Hispanic Heritage Club at Russellville High School, and I spoke with the teachers there and the students as well, and I got some really interesting feedback from them, and I'm going to share with you today this one of the students' stories. There we go. So you can see, and you have a link to all of these on the agenda. The story right here, the very first story, I think is so beautiful, and I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud because it is from a student, and I think it's just really powerful. Some of my teachers love to express their interest in Hispanic culture, and that makes me so happy. They'll ask about certain foods that we've had and where they come from, and they'll ask about different dances or holidays. They just genuinely express an interest in different cultures, and they also like to talk about their own culture and to compare similarities and differences. Talking about your background helps to create a closer bond with someone else because they understand where you come from and why you do certain things, like fasting or your manners. so on. Having a teacher that cares enough to create a club based on your heritage exemplifies this. It makes students feel more confident about their background instead of shying away from it because they go to a school where they are a minority. It shows everyone how remarkable any person can be and that the world is full of diversity, but we can still come together and appreciate each other's differences. So you can tell what an impact this one small act by now Dr. Gray, what it has had on these students' lives. So, I'm going to wrap up today with this thought: good intentions are not enough. They don't make us culturally competent, and they don't solve social or educational inequities. We have to be intentional with our practice, our culturally responsive practices. And my challenge to you is to think about your identity and begin comparing your similarities with those around you. I'd love to hear about the things that you notice when you put your similarities first. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. Any questions or comments, board members? Anything else? All right. Thank you so much. All right. We are now to Chair's report. Feels like the last month has gone by very quickly. So nothing particularly substantive report, but I do think we need to think about our board schedule for the coming months. As just a reminder, obviously we will be here for a two-day meeting February 8th and 9th, and then in March we will be, our plan is to spend the 7th, Wednesday the 7th in El Dorado, and then be here for our action agenda on the 8th. Okay, so just that everybody has that on their calendars. Now, we do need to think through what work sessions that we need to try to get done in the coming months. And as we've said, we will try to work those into Thursday, Friday during the day, but if we do need to do a dinner work session, we could. And I was going to ask Ms. Kaufman, sorry, kind of what's your thoughts on when we might be there for a work session on any of the Act 930 A to F stuff? Are we imminent, or are we closer to the summer? We just kind of need a little guidance, if you have it, about that.
I'll look to the person next to you for some of that guidance as well. So we've been waiting to see where we were with ESSA. We think we're very close to approval. That's this weekend. My plan is to go back through our very rough draft for Act 930 and make sure that everything matches. And then next week work on tweaking anything that may need to be tweaked, and then I think we'll be pretty close to sending them to the governor's office for review.
No, that's accurate. And, you know, our challenge has been, as terms and timelines and things change in the ESSA plan, that had a direct impact on some of the provisions of Act 930. So it's been a kind of a give and take as we've gotten feedback, provided feedback, made adjustments. Deb's right, that we have to make sure they're aligned in the rules for the Act 930 before we can send those to the governor. So, and I don't know how long the governor's review will take on that, but you know, we'll make sure they know that it's a high priority for us.
Okay.
In addition to that, we've just started our first go-through of setting cut scores for A to F. So we're holding numerous stakeholder groups for that all through the month of January. And so sending out invitations yesterday afternoon. We'll have some more to send out in the next few hours, hopefully. But I'm trying to get those out so that we can get all of those sessions scheduled, hoping the weather will hold up with us. If everything works out, then we hope to have those rules ready to send to the governor's office sometime mid to early February. And so everything's just contingent upon ESSA in us being able to look at everything to make sure that everything aligns. And that's what's most important, because if you start the process and then have to start back up, change, and restart the process, it just takes even longer. So those are two big things. As you know, we did our webinar Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? And put out some information about the ESSA School Index, but once we know for sure about our approval from ESSA, then we'll have many more that will come out that will just be informational. So then we can set up work sessions from that about how deep do you want to dive into it. And meantime, Denise is running data as quick as possible. So I'm sure that some of those questions you're going to have are not only just, how does Part A fit with Part B, but how many schools are impacted by that. So because we do have data sets now for 2016, we can go back and apply our ESSA School Index back to a data set and get some preliminary data. Then we can now applying it to 2017 data. And so we have something to look at, even though actually 2018 is our baseline of data. So, but we do have something to look at. It's not going to be the official data for ESSA. 18 will be that baseline. So we are running calculations so that you can look at that. We also are, Denise is working, I've been corresponding back and forth with her. We're ready to put out the first draft of our business rules for our ESSA School Index. And so that's going to go out in draft form so that everyone can go in and look at those and ask questions, give us feedback. We're doing the same thing internally because there are I can't even tell you how many decisions have to be made. And as schools are looking at their draft reports, they're asking really great questions that's making us go back into those business rules and go, okay, is this the best way? So this stakeholder feedback process is working, and we just need everybody involved in giving us that good feedback so that we do have the best product for our schools.
So on public, release for public comment of Act 930 rules, our best case scenario would be March? That best case? Okay.
Probably.
Okay. And so I guess my question for the board, you saw how we handled the last big rule that went out, that we released it for public comment, but then we had a work session after that in advance in a timely manner so that board members could insert their own public comments. Does that process feel all right, or do you want us to have a work session before release for public comment? Because I don't want us to get to where we were with that last rule and really get caught. I think we all felt frustrated with our decision that day that we had to go ahead and release them for public comment, even though we had a lot of questions, which we got answered, but we had a lot of questions. So I'm just looking for guidance of how to time all these things, and I appreciate your thoughts as well. How do we need to order these?
Well, just keeping in mind, Dr. Barth, that before we really can bring those to you all, we have to get the approval from the governor's office after their review, which, without knowing the timing of how long that would take, outlining maybe work session dates or possibilities, it makes it a little more difficult. But when we communicate to them how high of a priority this is, maybe we can get some feedback from them that would help guide us on this next step for you all in the process.
Okay. Ms. Newton?
I'm okay with what we did last time. I mean, we got the rules when they were released for public comment, that we had a few days to look at it, and during that comment period was when we had our work session. So we were able to comment during that period, and then, it actually went back and made changes, and then it's out for public comment again. So I'm okay if we have it during the public comment period. That way, if we had, some real big concerns, we would be able to voice them, and of course, we could do that anytime with the public comment, but I was okay with that time frame like it worked last time.
I mean, the other option would be, let's say that, I'm just making things up, let's say it ends up on the April agenda on a Thursday. I mean, the other option would be for us to do a work session on Wednesday night, so that before we had to actually cast a vote on it, it'd be public, but it would be before we had to cast a vote. We could do a work session literally the night before the meeting, just so that we felt really good about what we were releasing for public comment. That's another, that would be the other kind of, I think, responsible option for us. Do y'all have a preference between those two, or are both pretty much either acceptable? Okay.
The only thing I would add to that is these rules are long and quite detailed, and so I don't know that you'll be able to dig through them deeply in a very short amount of time. So I think it'll take several hours to kind of work through them. It took an hour and 45 minutes just to talk about ESSA school index.
Right. The problem with that, we do have this responsibility. It's our responsibility to do rulemaking as part of the rulemaking process. It's multi-part, a lot of actors in it now. But and the release for public comment is kind of the first stage of that. And I think as a board member, I feel queasy releasing something for public comment that I don't understand fully. And I think that's what we were all concerned about with that last big rule. So it would, I agree, it would take a long time, but it does, we're kind of in a weird spot here with these complicated rules, and with the engagement of the governor's office in such an assertive way. We're really kind of in a little bit caught in a bind. Ms. Hook?
I think, going back to what our Teacher of the Year just said too, I think to an extent though, we have experience that our legal department and the other people in the different departments, we have the trust there that they are doing and articulating what needs to be done within the rules that they write. So I think our responsibility is to look at the whole after it's done and send in the public comment if you have some, and not to get into the weeds of the doing or the rewriting or all of that, because there are lots of things that legal and the different department heads have to look at and consider that we as lay people don't, get into all that. So I have the utmost confidence that the people that work at ADE can look at this and write the rules, because in fact they were the ones who came up with the whole act to begin with that was passed. So I agree with Ms. Newton that to let us be looking at it, I mean, they mail them to us and we may or may not go into depth, and then Kalisha always lists all the people's names and phone numbers of people you can call and ask questions to. So I don't see a need from my perspective of having a meeting where we give a lot of input to get into the rules of something that's been passed. And I can assure you that legal doesn't want to have a lot of substantive change. So I'm perfectly comfortable with putting them on the agenda to send them out for comment, and then we can, in fact, if we have more comment, do it at that time.
All All right. I do think it's helpful for us to all be in the same room when we are able to discuss in a work session. Okay. Okay.
The concern I would have would be the next day voting not to put them out for public comment. I think that would open some transparency issues and just issues that I'm not sure that we'd want to do. So I think go ahead and release it. Let the public comment just like we do, and let it go through the process. And if there are big changes that need to be made, then they go again. And so I think that's part of the process that makes the rules good rules when we get done.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. Ms. Reith, did you have?
Just to say, though, to echo, I would appreciate a work session, and I think no one's opposing that. I think, it's a question of the timing, but just to reiterate, I think it added a lot of value to our conversations this fall. I think it's important, especially because of, at the end of the day, our responsibility that we've given, right, to this process and overseeing it. I just think we need to delve a little deeper, so.
Well, and I think there are times when we're asked about things, and I think we need to be fully informed so that we can be good liaisons to the public. So, okay, so we'll work through that, but I just wanted to get the board's sentiment on how we handle that. It sounds like we're in some consensus that what we did last time is akin to what we'll do at 9:30, and then probably on A to F as well, though it might not be quite as complicated since we've visited that before.
If you will watch any of the webinars that we put out, either join us live or watch them, that we're posting the recordings for those, I think that will help kind of move that process along. But we'll be prepared for any Wednesday night before a board meeting. Thank you.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. The other thing that I had on my list, and Clecia may have something that I'm missing here. We had talked at some point about a community service learning report in terms of and so I think there were some questions about that, but at some point, yeah. What do you think in terms of timing on that?
So Stacy Smith, so we met with Department of Human Services, who's also a part of that legislation piece this last month, and actually have another meeting with several different parties on that. We're going back and look at the legislation and the way that whole piece of legislation has been put into place, and feel like there's some things that we really need to update. Especially the application going directly to DHS. We feel like there's probably schools that need to take a more active role in where they're sending their students for community service, because it's now within the school index for the SQSS part of ESSA. We're revamping the whole piece, and we're hoping to come to you guys with a work session to say, this is what we used to do, this is what we're proposing to do, this is what the new application would look like, and these would be the course credits. So we feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Hopefully that will come, I would say, probably February, March.
Okay.
Okay.
And do you think we can do that on a Friday, or do you think we need an evening? Is it how long?
We could probably do it on a Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be prepared and have it organized for you and information beforehand that you can read and then be able to answer questions.
Okay, great. Super. That sounds fantastic. Thank you. And then the other piece, the other thing that I'm still getting, I think there's still a lot of agitation out there about, is the implementation of the Dyslexia Law. I'm still getting a fair, I think we're still working through that. I don't know, are we in a spot to get a report on Dyslexia Law implementation? Thank you, Ms. Smith.
I thought we were getting to the point where we weren't talking about dyslexia anymore. I think we still have pop-ups that happen. There are specific districts that I hear frequently from the advocates with concerns. A lot of it revolves around the district's choice of curriculum and what program they have selected to provide the dyslexia interventions with. As a state, we don't tell a district you can or cannot use a specific curriculum. We try to give guidance on specifically what the legislation says, what the requirements are within the program, and try to have lots of support and communication around that. We do have dyslexia specialists at every educational co-op. who work with their regional folks on popular curriculum in their areas and trying to bring in the right people to provide professional development to those school districts. But you'll see us where we were 3 years ago to where we are today. No comparison. In fact, this was the first year that we were not asked to attend large conferences to speak specifically about dyslexia. We were asked to come and speak about reading in general, which we think the Dyslexia Law actually started that conversation for us. But we do see it still in districts, but it's generally revolving around, don't like the curriculum that was chosen.
Right.
So.
No,
Would you like a report, or would you like me to?
I was actually just going to bring it up for the board to see if there was enough, because I hear from those advocates a lot,
They have my cell phone number, too.
Yes. So I didn't know how universal it was. Ms. Salas-Ford.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I know an email listserv went out to all of the districts actually at 9 o'clock this morning that the resource guide has been updated to reflect all the new legislation and has included, a lot of clarification. And then we are working on the amendments to the rules, and hopefully those should be going to the governor's office any day. So the dyslexia rules will be coming to you all probably at your March meeting.
Is the dyslexia guide on the website?
Yes, it is on ADE's website.
Okay.
And the main areas on that were updated had to do with the K2 assessment and components of the K2 assessments that align to the screening with dyslexia. Everybody wants to claim that their program can meet the needs. We had a group that actually went through and reviewed the specific components and tried to do some alignment between, yes, this one would meet, no, this one would not. So that was a real area of emphasis. I will say, as far as, I know we've referred to the dyslexia advocates, we're in a good place with the advocates as far as a working relationship with them in the Department of Education. I'm very, very proud of that. I feel like we have come a long, long ways. It's still about districts having enough information to be able to select effective programs, and we're still on that learning curve.
Yeah, I think the question is some about curriculum, but then also about the number of identified students and the dramatic disparities in identification across the state. Is that there, and we know that dyslexic students are evenly spread across the state. I mean, that's just the nature of any inborn trait, and so it doesn't make sense that in certain districts you have very high identification rates, and in other districts and schools, very low identification rates. That's just, there's something up that does feel beyond the curricular decisions.
Well, yes. When the screening and schools identifying when they're placing a student for services, the law is very clear that you cannot keep from providing dyslexia services to a student because of the RTI process. And so there are still some districts that I feel that they're in that learning piece too about when to identify that a student has characteristics of dyslexia and begin providing that intervention at an early stage, and not waiting for a diagnosis or not waiting for third grade. So there's still some communication and professional development support that has to be provided specifically around that area. And the screening component. Senator Elliott herself will say she would like to see a uniform screening element. Well, because we have different curriculums have different screening tools, and what we've tried to do as a state is align the different screening tools with the components that were listed in legislation. DIBBLS is still a screening tool for much of the state, but then you have specific dyslexia programs that have screening tools that are much more concise, that follow their program, and also meet the letter of the law. So there's been some flexibility there as well. But the reporting piece, we still see that districts are not reporting accurately. We had conversations around, well, there is a first grader, and they did show signs, and we started the program, but we didn't want to label them as dyslexic. And so it's that piece of you're not identifying, you're just identifying that you're providing services. So there's still, it's communication, support, and professional development around the area needed.
Anything else on that? Okay, so we will be seeing the revisions to the rules. That obviously presents an opportunity for additional conversation. If folks feel like they need more information at that point, we can go that direction. And then the final thing on my list is, I know something Ms. Zook is interested in, is virtual charters and kind of where the state is in terms of virtuals. Do we feel like we want some kind of report on that? This was kind of on my list of things that have been sitting there. Where, I'll look to Ms. Zook, or do you want?
No, no.
Okay. Anyone else feel like, Ms. Newton?
Yeah, just some personal contact that I've had with virtuals just gives me some pause for concern, and so I don't know what the report would be, but maybe something to do with student outcomes or results, or I'm not sure, but there's some things about it that gives me just a little bit of pause, and I'd just like to know kind of how students are impacted, positives, negatives, and that sort of thing, maybe.
And I think this arose because frustration from some of us that we were facing individual decisions about virtual charters, either expansions or new virtuals, and making a decision on that individual case without kind of an understanding of the scope of virtual education in the state and the degree to which it's actually meeting its promise as a whole, rather than the individual cases. What, Commissioner, do you have ideas of what might serve us the best in that regard?
I think we might need a little bit more refinement of what it is you want to see from what sector, or is it across all sectors? Because it's not just virtual charters, it's virtual delivery of a number of, in a number of settings. So, if it's the charter concept, we have our 2 statewide open enrollments, but we've also seen a growth in charter, virtual delivery from conversion charters or blended delivery from conversion charters. And then we also have a digital learning task force that was established under the in the 2017 legislative session, and they are working right now and looking to see, where are we as a state on virtual delivery, digital delivery? What what are the trends in the nation? Where is that sector going? Quality of the curriculum, quality of the learning opportunities that are there. What is the market? The market's grown considerably in the number of providers out there. So it's a very broad subject. And even broad when you talk about student outcomes. Are we talking about for their entire experience in a grade or in a course, or so there's a lot out there, and we could bring updates from the digital learning task force that's working now. We could have the charter unit look at the virtual open enrollment and the conversion charters. Schools of innovation, that's another that's another source of delivery where they're using. So we can do that. If maybe I would ask for, maybe if y'all have questions about it, send an email to Kalisha where we can start grouping together some common interests or common questions that the board may have, and then we can start narrowing down what type of report we would bring you.
All right. So if anyone who does have questions about the state and future of virtual education, both charter and virtual delivery, if you get those to Kalisha in the next couple of weeks, then we can figure out kind of where we take that. Does that sound good?
Are we talking about things like, is there a teacher and a group of kids and a time that you sit down and do it, or are you talking about virtual in that it's like the old correspondence course kind of thing? I mean, does it vary for the whole spectrum, or is, that's what I can't get my mind around as far as, if I'm a student who my parents have chosen for me to do my education at one of the virtual charters, then what does that look like at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning?
Or 9 o'clock on a Sunday night.
But that's
Yeah.
what, yeah.
Yeah, so-
Must not be a teacher-student interaction on a regular basis.
Right.
So,
Well, and those are the types of things that, you know, if you'd like for us to pull data or you know, evidence together, or just a summary of what those, because there are so many variations of what can be done, and I don't know that we have a in-depth analysis of what all those different formulations could be, but if that's
more of the, like the 5-year-old, the 7-year-old, you know, they don't know how to be task committed yet to an extent, or a kid in special ed, or a kid that, you know, has a computer that goes in and out. I guess.
And that's one of the things that I'll give an example of Lakeside School District. You know, they have a School of Innovation, and they are looking at the very earliest grades. Am I getting that? Did I say, is it Lakeside? Yeah. So they, you know, there's one example of digital delivery at the very earliest grades, and what their experience has been as they have implemented that. Those are things that we can start piecing together what that puzzle looks like, because it is a puzzle, and you know, if as you think about that further, if you could put that in that email to Kalisha, so we can then get it to the teams that will be starting to pull those examples together. I think we could put something together. I'm not sure what the timing would be for being prepared for a work session. That may be more of something that we do summer or early fall, if that's not too far out in your.
It might be helpful to delay it till then, because because we're going to rotate off 2 people and rotate on. So if the new people are going to need to know it for the next 7 years, then having them here rather than having to do it twice.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Ms. Chambers?
As we are talking about virtual specifically, but things that we're interested in gathering information on for the future, is this a time to ask for other things that don't have anything to do with virtual, or should that be later in the morning?
My next question. Okay. Let me tidy this up, and I'll come right back to you. So, I think we're not. I think this makes good sense. A kind of overarching the state of virtual education in Arkansas. We need more time on that to get a more comprehensive approach, and so if we could shoot for maybe July for that, just to give your team a heads up, and it's not just part of your team. It sounds like it's multiple parts of your team. That hopefully gives y'all plenty of time to think about that. I think it's good for the state to think about that, because we know that, you know, I think a few years ago, I think we didn't make this big push in that direction, and so there's kind of a question of kind of where has that gotten us, and what decisions do we need to make on charters and other things moving forward. Ms. Newton.
Just a quick question. When is the task force going to have their report? Do you have any ideas on that?
Dr. Saunders has been meeting and joining them. He can probably speak to that better than I can. I know they just had a meeting within the last few days.
That might be a starting point for us to even develop our questions from.
Yes, as far as a final report, we met just the other day, and we're still discussing determining what the word quality means. Mm-hmm. It could mean a lot of different things, and working with OEP to do the analysis on that data. Probably a time frame I would suspect to be in the fall.
Okay.
When that would be complete.
So we might even think about waiting until after their report came out to even look at it, just kind of to see where we're at and kind of what our questions are about it.
I think my concern with waiting too long is we start to move into another charter season, and if there are requests for amendments, for expansions, et cetera, I think I'm feeling, you know, a need to have a little more information before we
then.
make those evaluations. So let's kind of shoot for July with an eye to trying to maybe conjoin it with y'all's report as well. Does that sound good? All right. Excellent. All right. So my final question was, what else are you guys? I've kind of worked through my list that I'd had for a while. What else are y'all feeling some need to either do a short report or a longer work session on, Ms. Chambers?
I have two completely unrelated interests, and I guess I'm polling to see if my peers feel similarly. One has to do with enrollment of charters, and as we go into the enrollment season, one of the concerns that we've heard in the past had to do with how diverse the applicant pool was for the charters. Are the charters doing enough to ensure that their communities are fully informed about the opportunities so that we see the diversity, whether it's children with special needs, diverse populations? Are they represented in the applicant pool so that the charter enrollment is what we would hope expect it to be? And so I'm just interested in if there's any additional insight, transparency that can be made available to the board as we go into the enrollment time. And I know every school's different, they're going to go about it differently, but I really want to make sure that we're not missing moments when we can look into the process and ensure that the charters are addressing the community needs the way we would hope and want. So that's one. And if somebody could speak to the viability of that request and if there is interest. The other request, Commissioner, I think maybe would be directed to the ADE, but it's some means, actually I'm picking up on the conversation that occurred yesterday between Ms. Reith and you, Dr. Barth, when we were talking about how do we lift our understanding beyond individual decisions. Great rigor is going into the individual decisions that we're making right now, I feel, on waivers and a number of other things. But it's hard to really understand collectively the pattern or the cumulative effect of our decision-making over a period of time. Now, whether that's a school year that we're contemplating, I don't know what the right period of time is to assess, but it's an increasing interest that I have in being able to actually hold ourselves accountable as a board to the collective impact of our decision-making on the performance or the outcome of students. And I think ADE is in the best position to know there's so much data that we have right now. I'm actually, I guess, asking how do we lift above the data to more meaningful information that tells us how we're doing in the decisions that we're making. And so I'm able to talk about maybe a void in my own comfort level in what we're doing, but I don't know how to articulate more specifically what are the variables, what are the specific things that we should look at over a span of time and then attach it to performance and conclude how we're doing.
You want to speak to the second one? Oh, yeah.
Actually, I'll take the first one and then the second one. I think the first one, it's we can do that because the open enrollment process is just as it says, open enrollment. You know, it's the lottery, and I think maybe the thing of interest to you all might be, as we have talked about before, how do charters market, for lack of a better word, to and target the populations. For instance, you know, whether we heard Dr. Hill talk about Premier, you know, they have a very focused mission, and so their student population is going to look much different than, say, a East End High School charter at the UALR campus, both on the campus of a higher ed institution, but they're going to look totally different. I think there are some things that on a regional level, may have been last week or week before last, Northwest Arkansas, they had a very, or maybe it's coming up, I can't remember, but a school choice fair, you know, where I don't think fair is what they used, but in essence, they've invited everyone to come, public, charter, private, homeschool. I think in years past, the department has had a table there so that we could provide information. But as a way to have that different type of outreach, so that it's a collective and bringing all those groups, all those educating groups in at the same time. So I think we can bring some of that information to you. The enrollment, to make sure I know, because I think March starts that cycle of applications, letters of intent so it might be tough to bring together a comprehensive report, but I think we can bring you something from the charter unit that would give you an idea of what's going on. Okay, so that's one. On the other,
and I think to add to that, Lisa Academy, as an example, is not the only one. They have a flyer and they mail out to all of the zip codes of school-age children in the greater Little Rock area. It's, the county and the counties connecting to it. So that's another thing that's being done. And often at the charter panel, they ask them specifically when they come for amendments or renewal or whatever, what are you doing? How are you marketing? And of course, the newspaper is good about, those kind of things as well. There's always going to be, unfortunately, somebody that doesn't get the word.
But I think, what I'm hearing Ms. Chambers say is, it ties back to her second point too, is that we ask good questions on individual cases, but we do need to kind of at times say, what's the collective impact of these decisions in terms of what patterns are coming to the force. That's what I heard.
Okay. On the second piece, and it's not just the effective decisions by the state board. We have conversations about what are the impacts of policies, procedures, initiatives at the department level, and there's conversation of do we need a research arm or how within the department, because otherwise you have to farm it out. There's only so many things that OEP can do. We've talked about, hey, look, could we put together for folks who are pursuing their doctorate, they're always looking for things to research. Are there things that we can say, hey, we've got an idea for you. Would you like to do research on this? And it would be something we would need to talk to someone who is a professional in research to know, because I know with a lot of the research we look at on interventions or types of programmatic decisions that are made in education in general, you look at the effect size. Okay, you think you're going to impact this segment or this student population, and what is that effect size? We're talking from a 30,000-foot view now of what is the effect size of policy decisions, that are being made, which is, Dr. Ritter could probably spend 30 minutes giving us information on how that would have to be formulated. So that is something that we could start having conversations with groups like OEP or other researchers that are out there. And if there are any areas specifically that you would like us to focus in, because you all make a lot of decisions, school choice, decisions that are made on individual level, like you heard from Mr. Estes yesterday, Superintendent Palestine-Wheatley, very isolated, but in his eyes, that decision was helpful to that student. Can that be accumulated from a broad standpoint of all those waivers that seem to, that really every year at a certain point of year take up a lot of your time? I don't know. But the broader policy issues, are there things that we could pull together? Maybe. I hesitate to make a commitment to say, yes, we will, and give you a deadline, but it's something that, knowing of your interest in that, we'll start having the conversations with the right people to say, if we did something like this, what would it look like? How long would it take? Could we get a product to deliver to the state board?
And also, the webinar that Ms. Kaufman made reference to, if you'll go through either the whole webinar, or you can look at the PowerPoints. I think this new ESSA is going to really, because we talked about it at dinner last night, there's no longer going to be this ability just to average, and I got some bright kids, and so I don't worry about my kids that are behind, but now it's going to get down to those individual subgroups, and what are so what have you done for me lately kind of thing. So I think that would maybe be helpful to you as well.
I'll just, reiterate Ms. Chambers' request. I think it would be very good for the department moving forward to have a research office in place. I think it would be good for the state board in making wise decisions. I think all the decisions that you guys make. I think it would begin to really continue to move the state along in a positive direction. And I think that there are, that you're right. It's not all of it's ever going to be done in-house, but somebody who could coordinate that and be sure that it gets done, I think it would be really great. Okay. Anything else anybody is needing?
I don't know if it's a need, but I know Dr. Owa understands, because I always ask him every month about our ALPs and our long-term subs, just the need for teachers in the state, and I know the department is doing everything they can to get more teachers, and we're trying to gather data, but I just wonder. And Ms. Abels is trying to do things to elevate the profession, but I'm just concerned, and I know that the school index that the ESSA is going to have is going to help us identify districts where they have a disproportionate number of ineffective or out of area teachers. So that's going to help a little bit, but But if we identify a district, what are we going to do about it? If there's no teachers available, how do you fix that? And so, I don't know that there's any research that we can do. I don't know if, we're already gathering all the data that we can gather, and I don't know that there's an answer to my question. I just wanted to say that, it's a big area of concern for me that we can't put a quality teacher in every classroom in the state, because our kids deserve it. They deserve that. So, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. You actually, Jeremy Owa, Educator Effectiveness, you gave me an opportunity to highlight some of the things that we're doing, so I appreciate it. The first thing I would like to highlight is the Teach Arkansas campaign. So we definitely understand the need to increase the teacher pipeline. So February 2nd at our Impacting Summit at UCA that's led by one of our program advisors, Jeff Dyer. It's a summit that will highlight our teacher cadet program. But on that day, we will also introduce our Teach Arkansas campaign. So that campaign will center on increasing or attracting teachers to the profession in Arkansas, retaining effective teachers, and then attracting teachers back to the profession. So teachers who have retired or maybe moved to a different profession, we're attracting them. So that will launch the beginning of February. Also, with that, we're continue to support our teachers, even if they are not deemed unsatisfactory or ineffective. We continue out of our educator support unit will continue to provide assistance to the district and the schools on how to, to utilize the test process as a support system for our educators to increase the level of instruction or pedagogy for our teachers who are in the field and our administrators who are evaluating and supporting those teachers who are in the classrooms every day with our students.
I realize you are working hard every day and doing that, and we're making progress, and I realize that. It just,
sometimes I get frustrated that we can't go faster, but I know we're working hard. So I appreciate all of your work your department's doing.
Thank you, and we definitely appreciate the support that we receive from you all as well. So.
Let me just add, because this is I just remind everyone that not only are you all on the board in a responsibility and a role of policy making, but I think part of that role is promotion too. And you have a bully pulpit that that no one else has at this point in time in Arkansas during the time that you're appointed. And I would just encourage every opportunity that you have to be out there and promoting the things that we are doing, speaking positively about those, directing people to when they ask you, oh my goodness, we have this great teacher shortage, what's going on about it? Well, we have those resources out there. Direct them to that, or direct them to Dr. O, or because we want to get the word out there. That's why one of the reasons that we've expanded our communication, bringing Megan on. Those are the things that we are doing, and no one is satisfied. We all want to go farther, faster. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get to where we want to be overnight, but we're all working together to try to make that happen. And just where you see the opportunities to point to those positive things that are happening, we just ask for your help in doing that, and ask for your partnership, because I think you all are in positions that are vital to making that communication and reinforcing what we are doing.
Something I was thinking about too, to Ms. Chambers' point, the charters deliberately do not get any demographic information. They can market to everyone, and we encourage them to do that, but we don't want to ever give anybody reason to think that they were being biased toward one group or another. So I'm sure you probably knew that, but it rang through my head like, that they don't know. They just know a name, but they don't know anything else about the child.
No, thank you. I want to ensure that I didn't imply anything other than our interest and encouragement for I love the lottery process, and I love to talk about it and explain to folks that may not understand how it works, how important that is. But it's absolutely counting on its success determined by a really thoughtful approach to access and information, so that folks that want to avail themselves and take advantage of that charter have a chance to.
Dr. Pfeffer, did you have something that you wanted to, or did it get covered?
Dr. Owa probably talked about it yesterday, or he told me that he had talked with you all about the equity plan or equity labs. But when Ms. Newton was asking, what can we do as we look at the data, I think that what really is a little bit different about our new accountability system, our state and federal accountability, is the fact that we have included educator effectiveness or educator equity in our plan for accountability for schools, not in a punitive way, but in a way to say this is very, very important. And the data that can be shared with schools, with the public, I think will help to elevate the importance of that. And to your point, when it is shown that schools do have a disproportionate rate in students' access to teachers who have the experience, the content knowledge, the expertise to really impact student growth and achievement in a positive way. It's not to further create disparities there. It's to then step in and help that district as they create an equity plan that would be part of their regular school improvement plan. And that's just not been something that has been regularly been part of any planning and accountability from a concerted way. So I understand when you say about the getting better faster part, and I think right now where we are is we're getting better at getting better, and we're going to keep working at getting better faster. So just knowing that those will be parts of those plans that then we can come back and look at and even differentiate the support from the state level to the districts based on what the needs are, what actions they've been taking at that time. So those are two things. And Dr. Owen mentioned the impacting tomorrow's summit. I just want to even back him up and talk about how excited I am that's really grown. There are going to be almost 500 students there that day. And these are not 500 students who are just coming to get out of school. These are 500 students who are right now actively in classes or some type of organization promoting them being teachers. So these 500 students have already an interest in becoming an educator. And we have all of our educator preparation programs have been partnering with this. So this is going to be a really neat summit. The sessions those students will attend throughout the day, and then they'll actually be recruited by college preparation programs. So this is that great way to just start that link between not just high school and college, but high school into that prep program, getting them through, for some of them, those first 2 years when it's easy to lose kids who go to college. So I just can't speak enough about that. I know that we have Ms. Howell here, so I really want to highlight for her that we hope the press is there covering this. I don't think last year it got much coverage, but this year I hope that the message is not depicting the charts and graphs with the declining enrollment. I hope that this will be our first step to highlight 500 kids, their teachers, over 40 schools, educator preparation programs. I hope this is the opportunity to change our narrative, because we've acknowledged that we have an issue and we're putting things in place. So I hope this is really the first step towards the next part of the story. So anyway, thank you for letting me follow up.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, we'll get to liaisons and committees in a second, but after the commissioner, but any other reports from members this month? All right, I'll turn it over to the commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually, we just talked about one of the items, the impacting tomorrow's summit, and would reiterate, if you are available, we would love for you to be there and interact with those students. A couple other things that I want to talk about. Kim, Dan, are we ready with our No Limits video? Let me talk a little bit about our No Limits campaign, which will begin on Wednesday, January 17th. And it's designed it's targeting our Arkansas high school students to encourage them to take the ACT more than once. Our ACT scores, if you'll remember, we set a new baseline from now that we are having all of our juniors take the ACT. We are now a census, what's called a census state. So that means all of our students are taking the ACT. And we established that new baseline for scores. If you remember the reports, the average composite declined. What we've learned in visiting with ACT is 37% of our students take the ACT only one time. And what we know from research is students that take the ACT more than once perform better. And this is an effort for us to promote that. Higher the ACT scores, the more doors open, better opportunities they have to move on to either universities, colleges, or trade schools. So we have developed a video. We're promoting this. We're also promoting the fact that cost should not be a barrier, because if you qualify, there are fee waivers available, and we're trying to promote the fact that, look, you can get these fee waivers. I think you can, so we've calculated with fee waivers, you could take the ACT twice, and then another free with the statewide. So by the time you take the ACT on the statewide level as a junior, theoretically that could be your third time. And we think that if students will do that, and if we can get that into the schools, embedded into the thinking of the schools, our ACT composite score is going to go up, which is good because that's what everyone wants to compare. But more importantly, that it's an equity issue, that more of our students will see more opportunities because of that. So we have a short video that's not complete yet unless unless we've updated it, but I think this is just a partial, but it gives you a sneak peek of what our kids are going to be seeing.
All right, so before we get started today, there's a few things that we're going to need to go over.
Where are my Arkansas juniors? This song's for you. There are many different routes leading to success, and I know tests can make us feel pretty stressed, but you need to have a plan for what you really want to be. And the first step is ACT. There's no limit to what you can achieve. ACT. There's no limit to what you can do or be.
Get ready for a future with no limits, just opportunities.
Just opportunities.
To bypass barriers to your future, you have to take the ACT.
You have to take the ACT.
You have to take the ACT. Here are 5 things you need to know. 1. The ACT is a test that measures what you've learned and if you're ready for college or a career. It's multiple choice and covers English, math, reading, and science. The test is scored on a scale from 1 to 36. You get a score for each section and then an overall composite score.
2. You can prepare for the ACT. Go to ACT's website. It has loads of free test prep materials. Be sure to check out the online prep live. There is a subscription fee, but if you qualify for assistance, you can get it free. Don't forget to check with your high school counselor. Your school may provide other ACT prep opportunities.
So Gail is still working, our production team's still working to finish that, but what you see there, and Stacy, you may want to come up and dig a little deeper into this. That is an Arkansas, those are all Arkansas kids. Those are all Arkansas students. And I want to make sure that the young man who, well, I'll let Stacy tell you about that.
The great part about this is this all started when we were actually meeting with ACT, and they were reporting our scores for the state. And we had a whole bunch of people in the room. We had Arkansas Career Education and Higher Ed and all these people there. And then afterwards it was, you know, we really need to do something to make people realize that we are paying for the ACT for every junior in the state, but it's optional. And so we want you to opt in, and we want you to take the opportunity to take it as many times as possible. Another aha moment in that day was that there's a survey that kids fill out, and you put your parents' income in there, you select the colleges that you want to go to, and it was that moment of, I don't know, for me, I was the first in my family to go to college. And I always tell the story about, I was actually, I went to college on an athletic scholarship, and I was a sophomore in college, and my athletic advisor said to me, Stacy, you need to apply for the college that you want to go to. And I went home that night and called my mom and said, Mom, I met with my advisor today, and she told me I needed to pick a college. I thought I was in college. And she replied back, I thought you were too. So it's that moment of kids who've never gone to college, or they don't have families that have gone to college. When you're filling out that survey, you don't necessarily know what it means. And so it was our opportunity to get a message out into schools about filling out the survey. That's how you link into grants and scholarships and opportunities that might hook you into their school. It's not all about going to Fayetteville. There are lots of trade schools around this state that we want to make kids aware of, and that it could be for them. Chauncey, who is the senior in this video, is a student at Little Rock Central. And when we took the idea to Gail that we wanted to make this video, we said we could have the governor, we could have Commissioner Key, we could have Higher Ed. And she said, no offense, but kids don't want to listen to them. They want to listen to other kids. And Chauncey is actually the son of a Department of Ed person from Accountability. So the name has left me. But we pitched the idea to Chauncey, the senior, and he just scribbled out a song, made it, and next thing we knew, we had a whole song. So not only do we have this video that's going to be in all the classrooms, but we put together an entire video of just the song. That's pretty amazing. But we've got posters, we've got banners, we've got a social media campaign that's going to kick off and really bloom we're excited about this, and I hope that we come back next month with the whole group of students that participated and recognize them for their efforts, because they're about to become social media sensations. Chauncey's going to blow up, and we're hoping that this is something that we're proud of as a state. It's not about the test. And that was something that, I know when you listen to that, it's take the ACT, take the, it's not about the test. It is a gatekeeper, whether we like it or not. And the more times you take it, the more that you prepare, the more times that we get kids in the right classes, the more opportunities that can open for them. So it's a little bit about knowledge. So thank you.
Chantel Williams, School Improvement. That's that Chauncey is her son. He did that. I mean, he did all those voices are his voice. That whole thing. And so great talent, and really happy to tap into that talent. So you're right. Kids are going to like that a whole lot more than listening to me, or sorry, Governor, if you're watching, they're going to like that a whole lot more than listening to the Governor. Any questions for us on okay. The last thing I want to talk about, as Dr. Barth mentioned, on Monday we'll be celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day here in the state of Arkansas. Thanks to the Governor and the work of the General Assembly, standalone holiday. And as part of that law that was passed, we were required to update materials, educational materials on Martin Luther King Jr., on African American history, and Stacy is going to come and talk to us about that a little bit.
Okay, so this is actually on our social studies webpage. You'll see that there are two links up there. There's a purple one and a brown one that were both part of Act 561. The purple link is the resources for historical contributions made by African Americans. If you'll click that link for me. We have a whole list of resources and lesson plans that are built in. This was a tremendous task for our unit. It was easy to find lots of resources, but to actually go through the different resources and look at the lesson plans, we grouped them by grade levels so that it would be easy for a teacher. We tried to put summaries of exactly what the resources are and what the lesson plans are, but there is a whole page there of different resources to meet that requirement. This went out on a curriculum listserv to all curriculum coordinators throughout the state. It'll go out on a listserv to continue to promote it, not a listserv, the commissioner memo to continue to promote it, but there is a whole page there on our website.
Any questions on that? Okay, that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Super, great, thank you. Thanks to everybody at the department. We have a couple of task forces we need to hear from. The first one, family engagement. So Ms. Reith or Ms. Dean, whoever wants to take the lead there.
Just making sure my mic is on. We had a very exciting and excellent meeting back in December where we were able to get some additional information from Megan Abels, and now she is joined. And Commissioner, I don't want to steal your thunder on that, but you have a new member of your team focused on family engagement on your staff, Ms. Kim Wright. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to her role and responsibilities in the organization, but now there'll be some additional staff from the Arkansas Department of Education focused on this. And so together, what we discussed and devised was a plan for moving forward with the stakeholder engagement process and a first stakeholders convening. We've been tackling a fairly large list of potential stakeholders to bring together and started to give some thoughts of how we might give some structure to that process and what might make the meaningful space for some sort of convening, what could even be a location that would be central for that conversation. I think with the holidays we were a little ambitious. At first we thought maybe we could get some of this information out, even a potential invite to the stakeholders convening before the holidays, but now thankfully the ADE much wiser, and folks like Kalisha here much wiser than those of us who work in the world of ambition, and so we've scaled back for the invite to actually go out after today's meeting, and so we'll be refining our thinking on this, and again this is trying to find that initial grouping having that cross-sector of both individuals, but also organizations, some of the church groups that we've talked about, advocacy groups that we've talked about, civil rights groups that we've been talking about. How can we bring them together to be part of actually helping us as Arkansas launch these family engagement standards, but then also bring this process down to the local level. And so today we'll be accompanied on the phone by Dr. Aurelio Montemayor. He was the gentleman from IDRA that we referenced in previous meetings. He'll actually help facilitate that stakeholders meeting so that forward can it be a participant in that meeting versus the facilitator moderator. But we're really excited about where we're going. We are being kept on track, I think for a few different reasons, but one of which for the federal government and the commitments that we've been made as one of these 14 states, right, committed to kind of piloting this effort. So they have us in a pretty ambitious timeline. But I know even for myself personally, knowing that I'm now 5 meetings left after this one before I roll off the state board, and so really wanting to feel that by the end of this time and period that we've set some milestones and markers. So I think we'll have more to present next month in terms of not just the stakeholders convening, but the timeline for the rest of this year and moving forward. It is going to be a multi-year process, but you are going to see some tangible next steps. And the exciting thing is that really everyone around the table was very committed to this not just being about these family engagement standards and the ESSA process, but more broadly, how do we work with community and families to be partners in the education of our children, in helping lead, right, this next step of vision and aspiration and hope that we have on making sure that every child gets served, and that it's a cross-sector of parents, it's a cross-sector of organizations. And so we think it'll also dovetail and have some nice energy with some of the other task force, but some learning that we hope more broadly will help be a reference to the ADE. And I just want to say, Commissioner, we feel that commitment, additionally with the movement of Ms. Wright into this department and thinking you know that you're putting the resources as a department behind actually rethinking how we're communicating, but also engaging with families. And Megan shared with us that she shared that at the national level in their convening in December, and really we were lauded as an example for the nation. That it was obvious that there was no other state that was taking more seriously this family engagement process than us in Arkansas, and a lot of that evidenced by even the commissioner's staffing of folks here in the department who are taking this on. So it just, and it feels like the right culmination in the right time, right, for some of the questions and things that we're asking as a group, and trying to maybe get some more partners and support in that effort. And I couldn't be more excited that this be the last project initiative that I'm working on my time on the state board. So Ms. Cherise, I think, was sick in the last one, so she missed the last meeting. But we're very excited, and I have hopes and aspirations for the future of this with her role and her co-leadership in this effort. So that's kind of a summary from last month.
Great.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wright. I appreciate that. I would love to take credit for that, but that credit goes to Ms. Kaufman and the team. As we are changing our approach to improving schools, transforming schools, one thing that we have made clear, and I made it clear to superintendents this week, school improvement is no longer the job of a unit or a person in a district or a superintendent or the unit at ADE. And having Kim involved with this, I mean, that is one aspect of improving our schools. When we reach out, we get more engagement from our families, from our communities. We know that. So she's going to take her expertise in school improvement and be able to help guide and add to the work that you all are doing. So I appreciate that. I pass that credit along to Ms. Kaufman and the team there that it's a commitment from the entire agency, and we think it's going to pay off great dividends.
Great. And y'all will be meeting at 1 today, right, in this space, and so if anyone wants to stay around and participate in that. But thank y'all both very much for your work on this. Next up is the Task Force on Student Discipline. Ms. Dean, Dr. Hill? Ms. Dean?
I think we had a really productive meeting yesterday morning. We all met at 8:30. We are diving more deeply into ways that we can serve our children better, and looking at discipline not as a punishment, but as a way to serve the children and ensure that they get the proper discipline that they need while still receiving the necessary services and not losing out on getting their education. So we had a really good discussion about, as the department and as we all talk about making this student-focused learning, why can't we do the same thing with student-focused discipline? And looking at it more of from a perspective of looking at the child from a whole child perspective and evaluating children when they're sent out of the classroom, evaluating the needs of the child. What's going on with you? Have you had breakfast this morning? Is there something going on in the home? Is this a repeat offense? And getting away from the one-size-fits-all way of disciplining that has been an issue for some years. So we're looking at what we can do to give superintendents and principals more freedom to make those decisions at a local level and giving them some flexibility so that there is not this, you have to do this if this offense happens, this is the way it's got to happen. Because we heard some horror stories, didn't we, about children where the human element was missing. If a person had been able to make the decision and not have to make the decision according to what policy said, it would have been a totally different outcome that would not have been so damaging to the child. As I stated in the meeting, looking at it from a triage perspective, when the children come in, what's going on with you, and how can I help you in this situation that causes the least amount of damage? We just discussed how we can get there. We talked about not only them not losing their educational services if they are in school or out of school suspension, but also athletics, them not being completely separated from the athletic department, because as Dr. Hill knows, that coach and that relationship that they have is so vital for them staying a part of the school community and being engaged. And I'm going to let him kind of speak more about that, since that is his area of expertise. But we had a really productive meeting, so I was very pleased.
I don't have very much more to say, but we're really looking at the AAA rules and bringing AAA into this, because oftentimes when you tell a person they can no longer be a part of extracurricular activities, then you disengage them from the whole education process, because sometimes that's the engagement piece that they have, and that's the mentor that they have if they come from a one-parent home, a father's home, or something like that. So Ms. Lamb has been just an advocate of not taking education away when you suspend a person. It's like she said, even in prison, when a person is put, they continue to educate even while you're being punished. And so we want to incorporate wraparound services for the discipline process and not disengage them from the education process, because when we do that, we're promoting the ACT scores, but if they're not getting taught, you're going to see lower scores, which is going to have an impact on our state. So we want to make sure holistically that we do that. And I'm going to take Commissioner Key and Little Rock School District Superintendent pour over to a site that we're looking at for an alternative for the middle school to see exactly. Fellowship Bible just donated a infrastructure that we're looking at that Ms. Lamb went and looked at, and she just fell in love with it. It's already prepared as a school, and that could be a way that those people who, rather than having to send them home, as we've realized, when we're sending our children home and they don't have anybody there, and then the parent is having to take off work, I mean, there's a lot of social dynamics for negativity that arises out of that situation. So how can we better meet the needs of the students by placing people in their lives that can be a part of the support system rather than the punitive system? And so we know we have laws, and we want to follow those laws. But as Dr. Saunders has mentioned, would you please come up here and tell your story? I'm going to use this. I mean, as he told me this yesterday, and I want him to, as a coach, I mean, I think your story needs to be told, and how you made that assessment. Okay, I understand.
Good morning again. Yes, Dr. Hill and I were talking yesterday, and about the ideas of, zero tolerance, or, that sometimes you have to handle cases differently. And I told him a story that I'll try to keep it as vague as possible. While I was coaching, just took over a team, and was probably there about a week and a half, and just still getting to know the kids. And I had one child in particular that a young man, he was a senior in high school. And I had a report from one of the coaches that came up to me, and one of the other coaches, and said, hey, saw this child this morning that was at a restaurant, and they were drinking coffee and smoking all morning. And of course, preseason, I'd had to talk with the students about how to behave. We're not going to smoke, we're not going to drink, we're not going to cuss, those kinds of things. So I got with that child, and I said, look, you know the team rules, and you were smoking this morning. And he said, yes, sir, I was. And I was kind of taken aback at just how blatant he was with it. I said, you can't do that and be on the team. And he kind of paused a second, and he looked at me, and he said, well, Coach, he said, if I bring you a doctor's note that says I can smoke, is that all right? And I was very taken aback. I said, that'll be fine. And brought a doctor's note back the next day. And basically, I ended up calling the doctor. It was the child was going through rehab, and was trying to deal with a lot of issues in his life, a lot more serious issues than the smoking. And at that time, the doctor said, look, I do not condone smoking. That is not okay. But right now, we're dealing with a lot of other issues. The child was homeless and trying to get off drugs and everything else. He said, we're going to handle smoking later, but right now, I'm not asking him to quit it. And so I told the young man, said, that'll work for now, and anything you need, I'm here to help you. And went forth with that. But that was just an example that you can't always say, I'll never do this or I'll never do that, and zero tolerance. And, kicking the kid off the team or not allowing him to play was definitely not the right decision, and trying to support the kid at the time. So that was my story.
And I think that's a perfect example about finding out why that young man was doing that rather than just punish him for what he was doing. And that's, he had to investigate rather than just punish. And so hopefully, as we look at that and working with that, we'll be able to investigate further how we can do that better rather than just disengaging the kid from the education process.
Ms. D?
I just want to piggyback on something Ms. Wright said as far as partnering with other task force. I think these two task forces will have a great opportunity to work together, family engagement and student discipline, because they're both needed. The family engagement is needed in order for discipline to take the correct routes. And when there is better family engagement, I believe that discipline issues will start to resolve themselves as well. So I'm looking forward to working on both of these task forces and delving deeper into what we can do to help our students.
Great. And I appreciate all the time y'all are dedicating outside of these meetings to your task force work. I very, very much appreciate it. we have some liaison reports. I'll just kind of go down the line. Ms. Newton.
The ESSA, I'm going to defer to the commissioner or someone from the department because I think it's changing minute by minute. So I think they're probably a whole lot more up to date than I will be.
Well, we hope it's not changing minute by minute because we submitted yesterday right at 4 o'clock. I think I reported to y'all where we were, and then after we finished, we found out, well, we had received additional feedback on different components that were coming from different contacts at the U.S. Department of Education. So not only did we have, I think I'd mentioned that we had a contact on the overall plan, but then we had specific contact from the McKinney-Vento folks on homeless students. We also had some separate feedback and clarification on the migrant program. Tina Smith, Gina Wendell put all that together yesterday. Ms. Kaufman, Dr. Hernandez, Dr. Pfeffer, the whole team worked through the clarifications and provided that, and we submitted and got confirmation that they had received our submission. We have also heard from their communications folks asking us for information and bullet points that would be part of what would go out once we are approved, which that's a good sign. So we are hoping to hear something back from them. I mean, there's no timeline, but certainly by sometime next week, we hope to hear something back from them. We think we've addressed everything that they asked us to address with respect to clarification or more information. So we'll keep you posted as soon as, let me ask, Gina, has that posted, or what we submitted at 4, has that posted to the website? Okay, so it's available, and have we emailed anything? We may not have emailed that to you all yet. I'm not sure, but we'll make sure that happens. Things were moving pretty fast and furious yesterday afternoon, so we'll make sure we get that to y'all. But it is posted, and again, I encourage y'all to watch the video of the recording of the webinar if you haven't already had a chance to do that Ms. Kaufman and Dr. Arola did earlier this week. It was really good. We'll keep you posted. As soon as we know something, we'll let y'all know.
Just a comment that I had, I thought the overall reception of the plan from the department, U.S. Department was very good as far as being positive. There wasn't just, I didn't think, major changes. They just wanted more information in places. So I was very pleased. I don't know if y'all were, but I was very pleased with the response that we got from the plan.
Well, we certainly, we wish they would just accept it as we had submitted it. But no, really, I think the process that we used taking their feedback did make it better. I really believe that. And the final product is better than it was in September. And that's how this process should work. So anyway, we're happy with it and excited about where we go from here.
Ms. Chambers, anything on human resources?
No, I just wanted to thank the department. We have a new topic we're going to work on here in the next few weeks, and I just appreciate the opportunity to engage as they continue to reposition to serve. And I did want to thank you, Dr. Barth. I think I'm going to be continuing this year as representation on the Finance Committee for NASB, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve and be part of Arkansas representing that. It doesn't take a lot of time, but hopefully it'll be a position that keeps us connected.
And that's a nice segue to our anything else on the NASB front, Maria?
Not so much that I have to offer, but more of a question I know that we brought up at dinner last night as well, whether we had any representatives here from our state board in Arkansas that wanted to be part of either the Public Education Positions Committee or the Government Affairs Committee. And then I say this, looking at Ms. Newton, because I think whether it was last month or the month before, your name had come up, especially for the Government Affairs Committee, which is a phone call. It's a phone call, I believe, once a month, Dr. Barth, if that's correct. And so just an opportunity there for us to, as things are moving politically at every moment, and especially as related with ESSA, maybe an opportunity for us to continue to remain connected with those in Washington, D.C., so that we can bring that information here to the department in our state. So I didn't know, Ms. Newton, since I think I brought that up maybe at the November board meeting or December, if that was all right.
I had already talked to Dr. Barth about it, I think.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
So I'll get your name turned in to the folks at NASB, so you'll be hearing from them as well. So thank you so much for doing that.
Perfect. And then maybe some guidance from you, Dr. Barth. I'm glad to report on NASB from now to the remainder of my tenure in June, but I have rolled off technically the board of directors of NASB, so I don't know if Ms. Chambers or Ms. Newton would like to be a liaison in that way or reflect on it over these next few months, and I'm glad to report in this space. I am. Okay. That was going to be my last.
Why don't we kind of keep you through the March legislative conference, and then we'll figure out kind of where we are at that point. That sounds right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. Awesome. Ms. Zook, anything on special education or on public school accountability?
Yes, on both. And before I start, I want to draw your attention, in case you all have not seen the Little Rock Family magazine, one of the program that one of the Little Rock School District Community Advisory Board members run, which is called Life Skills for Youth, out of the South City Church. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because it's a great article for Coach Clark and his team, but also it gets into a lot of the things that the Discipline Committee is working on, and then relates on into the community involvement. For example, the most recently, and they were so pleased with it, they posted it on Facebook, but it was play acting if you get stopped by the police, and the way to handle that. And this is if you get stopped by the police and you're innocent. So, the way to handle that and to, so the kids love it, and, anything that'll get them moving around. And then they ask them questions like, it's not the old, does anybody have any questions, and then move on. It's like specific questions, like what would you do if, and what would you do if, and what would you do if. Anyway, it's a great program. Special education, I think that we have talked about that a lot this morning, and what you heard was that they're doing a great job, and they're doing everything they can, and sometimes you can go in and make sure everything is done for compliance, and but to get into the classroom, that's another step, and they have to rely a lot on the people that are there every day. As you well know, that Ms. Kaufman and her team have been really busy doing. I used to work for a guy that talked about how you have your plate spinning, and she got about 5 or 6 plates, and she did that so well we just gave her 7 or 8 more. But anyway, she did give me a written report, so if you're ever asked by Ms. Kaufman to be a liaison, then say yes, because she makes it really easy, and I will read this report to you. The Standards for Accreditation is celebrating that every region of the state has some districts that are in complete compliance with the Standards for Accreditation. Good news. As a result of monthly communications between ADE and the district and the school administration, the standards annual accreditation system is an online tool that highlights areas where a district or school may need to examine school practices. Research and Technology automated the process, and the SAAS system emails a monthly update to district and school administrators. The Standards for Accreditation specialists are available to provide support to the districts, and the specialists will be contacting districts in the coming months to ensure all issues have been addressed. Secondly, the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, recommended a stakeholder engagement process for determining the cut scores for A to F, and she mentioned that this morning. I will be in the group on Tuesday, but and they've got several others, and I'm sure any of you, other than the date when one other of you is going to be there, because two of us can't go at the same time. Anyway, groups will begin the process in mid-January. I think the Tuesday meeting is the first one. The Public School Accountability Division is engaging in cross-training team members. The project is called Colleagues on Assignment, and the team members are learning about the work of other units and sharing the expertise with both units. Back to the old, as you remember, Dr. Weil was talking about, we don't want silos anymore. We want everybody knowing what else everybody else is doing and how they can help and pitch in. And we've referred to it a few times about Dr. Arola and Deborah and Ms. Kaufman did the webinar, did a terrific job, and had a great PowerPoint, and the exchange, it seemed very casual and relatable, and they're to be commended for that, and it was on the draft ESSA school index reports. The Federal Program Unit and the School Improvement Unit have collaborated with districts to approve most of the 1003 grant applications. 3 remaining districts are close to being ready for the approval. And that was, you heard the report from North Little Rock a few months ago, and that's what that entails. And all but one transition support plan has been submitted to the state board, which we've seen, and everybody shares concerns, but it's a first effort, and it's in education theory, there's a thing that sometimes your old learning gets in the way of learning something new. So I think that's to a degree what we're learning. It's called negative transfer. I think that to a degree is what we're working with here, is the way they've always done it is getting in the way of, like the old magic slate, get rid of that and go on to the next thing. And the commissioner mentioned yesterday that Dr. Weil had asked that, and the only one that's not in is for Earl. And Dr. Weil wants to be sure that theirs is done top-notch, and I'm can assure you will be. But if you have any questions, Ms. Kaufman will answer them.
Great. Any questions? All right. The only thing I have on the forward front is the Commissioner and I are working. We had a meeting scheduled for this week with Forward on some of the Little Rock collaboration work. We had to shift that meeting, but we'll hopefully be having that in the next week and a half or so. And so expect an update on the forward front on that and other items in February. Is there any other business to come before us? All right. Good meeting, everyone. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Black. Second by Ms. Reith. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Safe travels home.